Hey, this is Regina White Favors with a new series. The series is titled What Do You Bring to the Table? And it is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum and then also the Toxic Encounters books. And you can find those tabs marked as rebounding and also toxic encounter books on my website, reginawhitefavors.com. So, this particular series I thought is very interesting because there's this sort of ongoing social media discussion concerning men asking women what do they bring to the table, and it segues into conversations about submission and how most men want a submissive wife or partner. They're not always inclined to transition the individual into becoming a wife, but they want the individual or the woman to be submissive. And so it has transitioned into those types of discussions of submission and also tradition, that they want a traditional wife. And many people define tradition or a traditional wife as someone who cooks and cleans and stays at the house. They tend to be a housekeeper, homekeeper, a housewife. But I noticed that there's an irony to the discussion about what do they bring to the table, because most men who ask that question tend to label themselves or categorize themselves as alpha men, and they still, when a woman responds with the fact that she makes a certain income or she works a certain job or she has education, the men will say, well, that's not important to alpha men, right? Or that's not important to men just in general. And the irony that I find very interesting is that these men want a traditional submissive wife, but they also want her to work. They don't want the 50s, 40s, 50s type of wives who stayed home where the man went out and he was the breadwinner. What they want is still the woman to work and still the woman to be able to tend to the home, tend to the husband in a very traditional way, not have any true independence or anything like that. But when a woman says, well, she makes a certain amount of money or she has education, they sort of mock and scorn and look down on that. So I've been thinking about this series for a good while and just kind of listening to discussions and being sort of turned off by those discussions, as well as wondering, I mean, do people really know what they want? The most important thing that people need to understand is that you are always 100% responsible for yourself. So that means you need to do all that you need to do to ensure that you establish you. Just because someone decides to get an education or make a lot of money doesn't mean that they think that person is better than you. That's what you're supposed to do as an adult. You're supposed to leave your parents' home, get a job, go to school, get your own apartment, get a house, get a car, pay bills. That's what you're supposed to do. And so this discussion about what do you bring to the table is something that I want to explore. I don't know if I'm going to turn it into a script or something, but I have created a workbook companion that I'm going to introduce you to in a few slides. So this is what do you bring to the table, and this is preparing your table for engagement. And your table for engagement depends on where you are in your development. If you are preparing your table for engagement, if you are in your 30s or your 40s, well, it is, you've likely already received your education or completed your education, and so now you are already establishing yourself. So now you are at a 30s mindset, or if you're in your 40s, you're at a 40s mindset. So how you perceive the world and how you engage with another person is going to be a lot different than the person who is in their 20s, right? So preparing your table means whatever it means in terms of the particular topics we're going to discuss, but also just your table in terms of your mindset. your mentality about relationships, about relationship building. If you're the type of person who quits relationships after a certain time and you don't have a record of staying in a relationship longer than 6 months, that is your table. And so you're going to have to really address that part of your um, emotional development. So this is, what do you bring to the table? Preparing your table for engagement. So the curriculum is based upon the research I did for rebounding and rebound relationships. And that research you can find under the rebounding tab. And the rebound relationship research focuses on understanding the table. So this is the table that we're at as two partners. One of the partners is a rebound, and the other partner is a member of a core relationship. And so when you are engaging in relationships, especially romantically, and you don't know that the partner is already engaged with someone else, and that can be as in marriage, or it can be just in a long-term relationship, it's time to really think about what's going on with the table that you're sitting at. So that's understanding the table. And then the Toxic Encounters books um, do derive from that research. And so I go over that at the end of the presentation here. But it's Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum, and it is when you need to leave the table. So the three books, three titles under the series, the Bait, Hook, and Switch series, focus on rebound relationships, why people pursue them, focuses on also adult attachment, and then encourages the reader to go no contact. So this is the curriculum in addition to the workbook companion. So here's the workbook companion. What do you bring to the table? This is the series, and then this is taking many of the ideas that I have in this presentation and putting it into book form. So it's about 130 pages, and it is available on Amazon. Is it time to leave the table? So this is really connected to rebound relationships. When you realize that you are a member of a affair or something like that, and that, or you could be in a situation where it's no longer conducive. Your health is at stake, or your life is at stake, and it's just time to leave. That's just it. It's just time to leave. Long gone are the days that we continue to stay in relationships and places that we're not supposed to be in, just to endure it to our death. You can die in that relationship, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're supposed to be in that relationship. You can your marriage can be to death do you part, but you can also die an early death because you were never supposed to be in that relationship. So when you're thinking about, is it time to leave the table, I mean, that's a multifaceted question, because when you look at that question, you think about it, okay, if we don't agree on this particular thing, bringing back the kids example, then it's time to leave the table. It's not. It's not for you to sit at the table and try to convince the other person that the other person is wrong and they are closed-minded and that they need to rethink and have some grace and have some mercy. I really want kids, and I know you want to, and once the baby is here, it'll be all right. No, it's time to leave the table. That's it. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make the other person a bad person. It just suggests that you both don't agree on this particular thing. And it's not, and it's a deal breaker. And that's one of the things that's very hard, extremely hard to come to. It's a deal breaker. So when you're sitting at the table trying to determine if it's time to leave the table or exit the table, you look at your deal breakers. You take out a sheet of paper, you list what will be a deal breaker. Cheating would be a deal breaker for me. Cheating. Because I'm good to you. I'm good to you. I love you. I want to be with you. And I'm not cheating on you. So why should I have to put up with you cheating on me? And that's a very tricky thing, because what if the person, quote unquote, makes a mistake and that person never cheats ever again. You could be, giving up on a person um, uh, who may have a change of heart. At the same time, if a person was willing to cheat on you, given what they claim you supposed to mean to them, and they still cheated on you, you were still good to them, I don't. I have to wonder if they're actually going to not cheat again. You would have to in order for that to not happen, you would have to repent. You'd have to get your vision from the Lord about your marriage. You would have to obey God. You'd have to put God's needs first. You'd have to be in that kind of mindset to put God's needs first. And anytime you are confronted with temptation to cheat, that you have a strategy. You've gone to therapy, you get in your Bible, you read some books, you journal, you write a book, you do a number of things that suggests to a person, I no longer want to live a cheating lifestyle. I don't want to pursue cheating. I want to pursue romantic relationship stability. Then, there may be an exception to the rule. It may be an exception to the rule. But whatever deal breakers you have to make sure that you are prepared to stand by them. Because what if you love the person? What if you want to? What if you want the marriage, and then you stay in the marriage, and then 3 years, 3 to 5 years on down the road, he's cheating again, or she's cheating again? You know, it depends on what the deal. Some cheating may not be a deal breaker for some people. A person who does drugs may be a deal breaker. A person who becomes an alcoholic. A deal breaker for some people could be the health of the partner. If the partner gets sick, there was a recent report of a billionaire, I think, or something. His wife contracted, I don't know, like dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever. He decided to divorce her and get with some younger person who didn't have that disease or something, right? And so that's one of those things you got to ask. In 2023, you got to ask questions. If I get diabetes and I lose a limb, are you going to stay with me? If I get cancer, I think she got cancer. If I get cancer and there's no telling how long I'm going to have cancer, are you going to stay with me? If I have a heart attack, right? And it's a bad heart attack or stroke, and I may lose some functioning in my body, in my mind, or something like that, or are you going to stay with me? If I lose my mind, are you going to stay with me? There's some things you may have to do that are connected to their health. For instance, you may have to put somebody in a home or nursing home because of the types of machines that person has to have and you can't have in the house, right? For regulation purposes. We're not talking about that, right? But if you sit at the table and you talk about, okay, well, what if this and what if that and what if this, that's not being paranoid. That's being cautious. That's exercising caution. That's exercising understanding about the what ifs, because they can happen. If I get in a car wreck, no fault of my own, and someone hits me and I become paralyzed, are you prepared, or do you think you will stay with me? You got to answer that question honestly. You can't be afraid to answer that type of question. No, I would not. I really wouldn't. I prefer to not have to deal with that. Okay, and then you take that person at their word. You don't try to change and say, well, it's something else and they really believe this and I think we can do it and I think we can hang on. No. If you don't if you believe that you want a certain lifestyle in your life, you want a certain lifestyle in your life, and taking care of somebody who's ill is not going to fit that lifestyle for you, then you need to be honest with yourself. Don't waste that person's time. Don't let that person believe that you will be there for them when in actuality you know you're not going to be there for them. Right? So is it time to leave the table is something that you need to do before you get married. You shouldn't have to get married, endure the marriage, and then leave the table. No, you can leave the table prior to marriage. You can leave the table prior to you getting married. If you got a person who is not ready for marriage, it's time to leave the table. It doesn't make them a bad person. They're just not ready for marriage. If a person is not ready to commit to you, they have a cheating mindset, a cheating lifestyle, playboy mindset, playboy lifestyle. There's no sense in marrying them and producing a bunch of kids with them and then saying, well, maybe we should have waited. Maybe we should have made it. Maybe we should have done it. No, you knew from the very beginning that he didn't want marriage, or she didn't want marriage, or he was never going to give up his playboy lifestyle, or she was never going to give up her playgirl lifestyle. You knew that from the beginning. And so when you know these things from the beginning, there's no sense in trying to make someone be something or become something that the person doesn't want to become. So then you leave the table. You respectfully say that I cannot continue in this relationship because we don't agree on this particular thing. You don't let that person cry you back to change. Don't let that person manipulate you back to change. Don't let that person try to lie to you back to change. No, you said this is a deal breaker for me, it's a deal breaker for you, then we need to exit, we need to leave the table. That's a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do because people don't leave tables simply out of their reasoning behind investment. I've made an investment. We've been at this for 6 months, we've been at this for 8 months, we've been at this for 9 months, 10 months, 2 years, 5 years. I don't want to leave the table. But you can guard your heart and preserve your heart and guard against making a dreadful decision if you exit and leave the table early enough. And then you won't have all that heartbreak. Some heartbreaks can affect you so bad that it affects you mentally. It affects you um, health wise. It affects you in such ways that you never would have thought would happen. So, is it time to leave the table? So, these are the toxic encounter books that I mentioned earlier. This is Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships, Part One. Then Toxic Encounters: Adult Attachment and the Problem with Rebounding, Part Two. And then Toxic Encounters: Why You Should Go No Contact Post Rebounding, Part Three. So this is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationship curriculum, and these were the three initial books in terms of research where I go over um, rebound relationships, how it relates to adult attachment, and that's why we tend to stay in those types of relationships because we become attached. Is usually an insecure attachment, and you can chart the insecure attachment from your childhood to your adulthood. Then, of course, going no contact. Visit, subscribe, and follow. So this is the standard logo for the Regina White Favors website. And so you can also visit me on Facebook, Arthur Regina White Favors, YouTube, Regina White Favors channel, and then our Amazon Arthur page, amazon.com /Arthur Regina White Favors. Thank you very much for listening.